Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of People Talking from a Social Distance. Today I have an awesome guest, and I know I say that every time, but it's always true. This person is the person I always think of whenever I have an idea, but I need it to look nice. I go and find this person. And also, from what I see around the building and the interactions we've had, this person must have an endless amount of patience. And so obviously, if you put these two things together, you probably know who I'm talking about. We have with us today, Lee Zucker. I'm super excited that you're here to talk with us. I know I had approached you earlier and you're like, yeah, but I think this is going to be great. And I definitely mean that. Like anything in this building that looks nice, I'm always assume it has your fingerprints in shape or form. So.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah. I don't think I'm that interesting, so I don't know that this will be a very interesting podcast, but we'll find out.
Everyone always says that, and I always remind everyone it has nothing to do with me. It's always the guest, so it's not to put any more pressure on you.
No.
The first thing I always like to ask, and I think it's part and parcel of education, right? We think of ourselves as educators. It's a big part of who we are, but I think there's so much more to people in this building, and I always want to ask, if there's a label that you'd apply to yourself outside of your profession, what would that be and why?
This was like the hardest question for me. I was like, I'm like, hey, Owen, like, how would you label me? Like, what's my label? I'm so bad at labels because I feel like I just kind of like ebb and flow with like everybody. Like, I don't know, teacher is the first one that I always go for because it's kind of like that natural, like advocate, helper, I don't know. And then I think like mom, but like, I'm kind of a mom as a teacher anyway. Like all my kids, I'm like, put your mask up, like clean up your stuff. So the only thing I could think of that like didn't really fit in any of the categories that kind of goes under teacher is like weirdo. Like I don't really know. Like I don't feel like I just kind of want to do my own thing, and that kind of annoys some people, but it works for me.
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfect term, and I mean often we think of weirdo in a negative connotation, but it's not at all, right? Like it's the
God, no, let your freak flag fly.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I would agree. I don't know, maybe you're in the same boat that I am. I think a lot of our weirdness, people just assume is part and parcel of who we are, right? So it doesn't get shown as much because they're just like, oh yeah, that's Lee. Or like, oh, yeah. Dario's writing about like pagans again. So I think there's a connection there for sure, and I think that's a great answer. Yeah, I think too, like giving students an example of it's okay to be weird, I think is awesome. And I wonder if you feel the same way. Like, I don't necessarily know, because I never think of myself as like a role model. That freaks me out. But like, to be yourself and showing yourself in your profession, I don't know that everyone gets a chance to do that. Do you agree?
No, I don't feel like a lot of people do. And like the kids don't see like the true me that's like anxiety ridden and all that stuff. But like I mess up and I'm like, bro, I don't know. Like, let's Google it. Somebody was asking me today about like hair follicles and DNA, and because we were sort of talking about that with like we were talking about like the epidermis and all that stuff, and I was like, I don't know. So I like pulled a hair out, and she was like, oh my god. And I was, we probably could have just Googled that picture to find out, like. But I don't know everything, and that's okay. And it's okay to not know. It's okay to be different. I don't know. I think the older I get, the more I'm kind of like an old man, and I'm like, meh, I don't really care. Like, it's cool. Like, I don't look like this when I was in high school. I didn't have weird hair or anything, but like, I don't know. I just kind of like ebbed and flowed with the group. So I'd be like, oh, hey, these are my people in this class. Like, I don't know. Everybody's just kind of everybody. Be yourself. Stand out.
Well, I wonder, because I think, again, there's a similarity here. I always got like the old soul label, which I always thought was weird, right? Because this year I started to realize there are people in this building that I'm actually older than, and that freaks me out. I was like, wait a minute, I'm not the youngest person in every situation. This is weird. But I too came to that sort of later in life where you're like, you know what? I'm gonna roll with that. If I'm an old soul, then I'm an old soul. Like, deal with it. So I think that's just a great way to sort of be like, the expectations someone might have for the way I'm going to act, meh, I'm gonna be me.
No, and I think that's great. Like, when I think about, so like my grandma was one of my favorite people ever. And the older she got, the more like my grandpa had passed away. And so I'd go in, we'd have like our weekly visits. And like I always thought she was weirdo. Like she always was weirdo. And she was so inappropriate. And she would just like say the most inappropriate things. And like the more time I spent with her, the more I was like, you know what? You kind of have a point there. Like, let's talk about stuff. Let's normalize stuff. Like, and she was not like a liberal anything, but like we had really good conversations because of that, because she just like had no filter. And not that I think I'm like, I definitely need a filter because I get like verbal diarrhea. But you know, it's something that I've decided I aim to be. Like when I'm 92, like I want to have the verbal diarrhea, because at that point, what is someone going to tell me? Like,
it's fantastic. I think another aspect of education that's great is that it offers us a place to either sort of go into or lean into our passions, or even shows us new passions that we maybe would not have considered when we started teaching. So is there either a single or a number of ways that you think your profession has helped to shape or foster or embolden or even enlighten you to some of your passions in your life?
Kind of. I think it's helped me find kind of my niche. Like when I went into school, like in high school, like I always knew I wanted to be a teacher, but like at first I thought I wanted to be like the elementary teacher. And like people tell me that all the time, or like the art teacher. And they're like, oh, you're so good at this. Like you should do this. And in student teaching, I realized like, wow, I hate working with little kids. Which is funny because like in high school, like for almost 10 years, like I worked at a daycare, like not 10 years, maybe 10 years. I don't really know. It was a long time, but I always thought that that was like what I wanted to do. And the further I went along, the more I had like, you know, like my special needs kids. And I was like, oh, you're my thing. Like, I like that. And, I thought I wanted to be like with Able, and I kind of don't want to be pigeonholed anymore. I'm starting to realize like I like that I go in and I can teach like an English 4 class, and I can teach algebra, and then I've got like my Able kids of the world that I'm just like, oh hey, I know that book, let's script together. And they're like, no. So like I don't know. I think it's helped me kind of identify more of who I am as a person. So I don't necessarily know passions. Like I liked reading books, I like music, I like sports, like I like doing things, and that's always kind of been there. But like just kind of like narrowing in on like what things I actually like. Like yeah, I like everything, but like I like some things more than others. So that's helped for sure.
100%. Yeah, and I think I've noticed that with each of the interviews I've done with members of the special ed department is you guys are all so multifaceted. There's so many different directions you're all being pulled in all the time. And so, yeah, like I can sit here and just be like, Shakespeare, but I don't have to worry about math, or I don't have to worry about science. So it's very much appreciated. I don't know if you guys get told enough how integral you are to making us be successful here. So.
It's sometimes we could hear it more. So, you know, keep it coming.
The next place. No, it's totally fine. I told the kids yesterday, I was like, no one gets into teaching for adulation, but we're always happy when we get it, right? Like, you don't have to tell us we're doing a great job, but whenever we hear it, we're like, yes.
That's so funny, because like my conversation the other day was like, they're like, oh, you're just paid to like us. My conversation was, no, I don't get paid enough to like you. I just like you because you're weird. So
yeah, if you wanted to pay me,
world we live in.
If you wanted to pay me to like you guys, you couldn't afford me.
I need a little more.
The next place I like to go, because again, I'm all about. I didn't tell anyone this until we get to the end, but like I kind of made this podcast so that I could get people to tell me what books to read next.
Oh, good. Yes, that's part of the reason I listen to it. Or like music genre, I'm like, ooh, wait, who's that?
Exactly. It's super important. And I think, again, when we're in a position where even though we're less and less socially distanced by the day, we're still kind of separated from everybody. I think a recommendation can give so much and can show so much about a person. So any books, movies, shows, albums, anything you want to recommend that would help people sort of see the world the way you see it.
Okay, so I thought long and hard about this because I really like books. So this was like really hard to narrow down. Like that's like my escape, my me time at home, which I don't really get a lot. So like it's treasured. If I was gonna recommend anything to kind of see the world that I see it, David Sedaris and Chelsea Handler are probably two of my favorite authors, which is interesting because neither one of them are first and foremost really authors. But like they have they see the world kind of the way that I do, and I appreciate that. And it's interesting because if you read Chelsea Handler, especially like if you read her books as she's gone along as an author, they've changed a lot. And it's not always now about like the shock factor, the human, or like the humor. Her last book really threw me for a loop because I don't remember the name of it, but it's got a big orange on the cover. like it was very moving, and it was nice to see that like I've started to realize just how much like my anxiety kind of impacts me, and it's nice to see someone who is also like she's so funny, and she's just like seems like she doesn't care about the world, but then to see like she is a person and she really does care, and she's got like this soft side, and things do affect her, even though she, you know, she's got all this money, and you know that, but it's nice to read about that and kind of put yourself in their shoes. And I feel like David Sedaris, his self-loathing humor, like he likes himself sort of. I feel like that's me. I mean, I'm not like a gay man living in France, but I identify a lot with him, you know.
Yeah, I've read a lot of Sedaris. I remember like way back to like Santaland Diaries and stuff, all the way through.
I love it. Like Me Talk Pretty One Day is probably one of my favorite books. I just picked up. I didn't realize he released one at the beginning of COVID, and I just found out. So I'm like, oh wait, give it to me.
This year actually, so I've one of the things my mother does every year is she tries to find me a signed book by an author that I like, and so this year I got The Best of Me, the Sedaris collection.
Oh, that's awesome. Jealous. Oh, you disappeared.
They gave me new technology. Everything's acting weird. It's okay. It'll work.
Oh, wait, I'm good. I'm good. I can just keep talking, I guess.
Yeah, those are both awesome. I think in both cases, it's that idea of like they went from being mainly shock factor to like the later Sedaris stuff. You're like, whoa, he's like a human.
And some of it gets really dark, like when you're engulfed in flames. Like because you know, you buy this stuff, like going from Squirrel Seeks Chipmunks, where he's talking about everything in like fables, to like, oh my God, like my brother died and stuff like that. You're like, oh, okay, like this is real. Like your dad hated you. Like, okay, it's different. But then you're kind of like, oh, you're not just like funny. Like there's more sides to you. It's nice.
Much like we're seeing in these conversations with people. Bam.
Yeah.
There you go. Next one that I like to do, and you had some trepidation, but I think we got something here. I often think, I mean, it's simple for people to see someone and assume the things that they like or the things that they're interested in or the things that they do on their own time. But is there maybe a surprising fandom or an activity that you engage with that we would never guess, or that we would be like, oh, that doesn't sound like Lee?
Yeah, this was one I like was asking people about too. Like I don't know. I'm a pretty open book, I feel like. I just wear everything on my sleeve. Like I don't know. I thought really hard. I actually like to paint, was like the closest I could come with. I am garbage at it, but like I like it. I used to do it a lot more. I used to be pretty good. But like I stopped for a while. I got in like huge trouble when I moved out of my house. I moved out at like 18. College, and then just tried not to go back. I used painting as like a coping strategy, and I had asked my mom if I could paint in my closet, like nobody's going to see on the inside. She didn't realize that I had used like markers, permanent markers, like oil paints, and to this day, you know, 34 whatever, she's like, I'm still painting and priming that, just so you know. Like I would be better off just cutting it out. And I'm like, well, it was like this beautiful forest, and it was so cool, and it was like, you know, multifaceted. I had all these different like things using it. Oh my God, she hates me. But it's, I don't know, like I like doing that. I really like painting walls. Like I find it very soothing. Like give me music and a long time in a classroom. Like you guys buy the paints, I'll go paint it for you. Like I don't know. I really like painting. It doesn't have to be, unless it's a ceiling. Yeah. I love painting ceilings.
Yeah, that's never fun. I did some painting with my grandmother as one of my early jobs. She was an independent contractor, and I did some painting, and she was always like, oh, you're doing the ceiling. I was like, I hate you.
Yes, because it's the worst thing to do, and it's so hard to edge a ceiling. So then like you do the ceiling, you got to do the walls, and it's awful. But like other than that, like I don't know, like I like Harry Potter. Everybody knows I like Harry Potter. Like I have tattoos. I like tattoos. I like colored hair. Well, who knew? Like it's crazy. Like I don't know. Like fun runs, activities. I don't know. Like there's not really much hiding.
So which Harry Potter's your favorite of the 7? I'm assuming you like the books more than the movies.
Oh, absolutely. So like I tell people, because nobody ever believes me, but like if you watch the first 3 movies, they're pretty on par with the books. And then after that, like they just took civil liberties out the wazoo. The Goblet of Fire is actually my favorite, and I Dobby is my favorite character in all of the books. I think he's just this ugly, sweet little like I love him. I want a Dobby. And it's funny because my mom bought me a doll, and it is like my kids are afraid of it. Like it's so nasty. But like he's such like a good heart, and I love that. Like I'm always trying to find that in people. Like, oh, you're a jerk, but like I'm sure there's a heart in there, you know?
It's got to be something.
Yeah.
Dig that. I've always been a Prisoner of Azkaban fan, just because I think that one.
A lot of people like that one a lot.
It started the shift in my mind from like YA to a little bit more less YA,
yeah,
right?
A little darker.
Yeah. I think that's
I can do that one. The fifth book, he's just an angsty teenager, and I'm like, I can't deal with that. Like I deal with that every day. Like stop whining, man up. Like get some coping skills. Right. I can't. Like that one, I don't like.
Hilarious. Yeah, I would agree though. Like the movies started off, you're like, yeah, they're following the books, it's great, and then by the time you get to Deathly Hallows, you're like, that doesn't. That's not.
And you think like it's not such a big deal, but then these characters they didn't bring in that are so important. I mean, like even our Dobby, like they cut him out, and he played such a big part, and people are like, ew, why do you like him? And I'm like, well, clearly you've never read the books, because he has such a bigger role than just like that one little piece in the second movie.
Yeah, they're like, wait, the house elf with the Malfoys, and you're like, there's so much more.
Yes. And he's so funny. Like he's quirky. I like that. And he's so like caring. Like he takes care of Winky and Harry. And it sounds like I'm talking about a weird, like inappropriate movie right now, but like he's a good character. And
probably, I mean, not to belabor the point, but why not? We're already here. He's probably the most heroic character out of all, like, right? Like the most selfless, the most puts others before him. So like everyone, focuses in on the main heroes, and you're like,
anybody that irons their hands to just help another person, like, how do you not love them? Like, okay, you're a good person. Like, you're not even a person, but I love you.
So you obviously would not get a job in the Ministry of Magic, because you.
Me? No, I couldn't even do admin here. They'd be like, your heart's too big. Like, what's wrong with you? Punish the kids. And I'd be like, I don't know how.
Fantastic.
All right, we start off course.
Yeah, I mean, we could probably do the rest of the thing about Harry Potter, but let's reel it back in a little bit. for those who are listening, are like, I've never read those books.
I had that conversation too. We were talking about like being a puff, me and Rachel Seeger, and she was like, I'm a puff too. She's like, I never want to admit it, and I'm like, yeah, it's weird, but like I know that I'm a good person. And we had Mr. Thiel in the back room, and he was like, what? You're buying a house? Like, what? You want to find out what house you're in? He's like, no, I'm good. It's good.
That's hilarious.
If you know, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Next place I like to go is offer some choices, and always excited when people go with this first one, because we all love food. There's no one who doesn't love food to some extent.
I love food.
Yeah, food is amazing. So is there either a favorite food you like to make or eat? Is there a favorite restaurant? What do you got for us?
Okay, so food in general is like my life. My husband makes fun of me because if a food is really good and I really like it, like I do this little like dance in my chair while I'm eating it, and he's like, you're such a weirdo. Like, who does that? And my daughter does it too. So I'm like, see, this is like ingrained in us. Like, this is the thing. I love making pies. Like, pies are my favorite. It's my favorite dessert to eat. But I like real, like I buy like the frozen Edwards pies because I'm too lazy to make my own key lime, but like it's not that good, but like that's how much I love pies.
Okay.
But I love eating everything. Like I will try anything once. You're like, oh, this is tripe. Like, oh, you probably shouldn't have told me. I'm gonna take a bite. Let's hope I like it. Like I've eaten some really questionable food that I'm like, oh, why did I ever try this? Like I knew I wasn't gonna like it, but like I love food. So like when I read about people like they're like eating crickets, I'm like, okay. So I have a friend, her husband's from Mexico, and she was like, he like makes them and dips them in chocolate, and I didn't like it, but I tried it. But like my two favorite places, and one of them is like super within reach, on 47th in the city, Frankie's Place. So it's owned by Frank Sinatra's family. His food tastes like my grandma's food. My grandma was such a good cook, and like we spent a lot of time together, and she wasn't Italian, but like my grandpa was, and so she got into this habit. She would be like, you need to eat, keep eating. And oh my God, her food, like when you walked into her house, it smells like Caputo's.
Right on.
I love it. Like I go to Caputo's just to get like those memories back, but like her food was so good and it tastes like Frankie. So like if you want good Italian food, like can't think of a place that's better. And I really like hole in the wall places. So when I lived in Arizona, there was a place it was a gas station and it got turned into a restaurant. And I actually saw it on like, what is that? Dives and whatever.
Dives, yeah.
Yeah. So it's called the Little Sombrero. And if you're ever around Phoenix or Tucson, I highly recommend it. Like it's just these like 4 old ladies and they just cook all day and there's like telenovelas going on in the background. Half the time they don't hear you, but like it is the best food. Like one time I went there with my husband and I was trying to order 8 tacos and she said something back to me, but I didn't get it. And I was like, yeah. I ordered 8 burritos and we just ate burritos because they're like the size of your head. We eat those for like 2 weeks, but it is like the best food ever. Like no regrets, right? Like, I mean, it cost me like $100, but it was worth it.
But I had 8 burritos, so.
But I had 8 burritos, and they were all different. And I was like, oh, this one's beans. Oh, this one's chickens. Like, oh, like, yay.
Awesome.
So, which is funny because I'm not really a big meat eater, but like, oh my God, you give me the right meat. And I'm like, yep, now I am. So I can't be a vegetarian.
Yeah, that's there's definitely switching over to vegan. There's definitely some things I miss, and a good meat burrito. Although I make a hell of a good bean burrito at this point.
I like at home. That's what we cook. My husband became a vegetarian for like health reasons. He wanted to be a better athlete. So like, I mean, we don't eat like occasionally we'll eat like meatballs. But like most of my food is made with that. And I found a lot of it's really good. Like you just have to make it yourself. I've learned. So like. Tried jackfruit from a package and that tasted like vomit. Made it myself, much better. So
I'll have to give it another try. I also tried from a package and I was like, nope, this is not for me.
It's too vinegary. They add a lot of vinegar to keep the consistency and it tastes like garbage.
At this point, it's like tofu and maybe some seitan every now and again, but those are my fake meats.
I have not gotten tofu to work for me. I can only buy like pre-made tofu product.
Yeah. I got some tips. I can give you some tips.
Yeah, I need it because like I tried it. Someone was like, put it in the air fryer, and it just turned into like a big melted mush. It looked like wax, and I was like, I'm not eating that.
I think that's not gonna work. That's not good.
It was awful, and it was terrible to clean.
Oh yeah, I can assume. Coming back around to the beginning, I also a big fan of pies. Do you have a favorite pie? Favorite type of pie?
I do. And people are gonna be like, what? Have you seen the movie Waitress?
Don't think I have. No.
Okay, so it's never got like big acclaim or anything like that, but it's about this woman who's in an abusive relationship and she works at a pie place and she makes like the best pies and she makes them up on the spot. And in the movie, I Googled it because I was like, I want to make these pies. They have recipes from it. So in the movie, there's a pie called Sweet Chicago Pie.
Okay.
And it's basically like a chocolate mousse, but it's made with cherries. And I don't even know where he got the recipe from. Like it was from the internet, from this, when you're reading the blogs and they're like, oh, on a rainy day in the woods. And like, it took me forever to get to the recipe, but it is my favorite pie and it's so good. And my husband's favorite pie is actually from that movie too. He likes the mermaid pie. So it's marshmallow base and he's like obsessed with it.
Fair enough. Yeah. Big fan of pies. Luckily, Ben, his family makes pies, and he's like, "I'll make a vegan pie crust for it." I was like, "Oh, I'm so excited!"
Yeah. See, I don't have to think about it. I'm just like, okay. Put some eggs in there; it'll be fine.
The last one I have. Oh, that's great. Just stab me in the heart again.
Oh, did you want to make that? Sorry, you can't.
Got too many eggs. I think. And I was glad you picked this one because I'm always excited to hear, as educators, we're lifelong learners, right? We're always learning something. We're always trying to learn something new. So is there something you learned recently that you're excited about and you'd like to share?
Okay, so this is like a wormhole. Okay. So I'm really into like documentaries and stuff now. And when I learn a certain fact, sometimes like I start Googling stuff and then I literally fall into a wormhole where that's all that I'm looking at for like a week straight. So sometimes they're not that interesting. Sometimes they are very interesting. So like I had learned you can eat penguin eggs. And I was like, and when you boil them, they're actually clear with the yellow middle. And I was like, get out. Like that's like a thing. Like you can eat penguin. And then I was like, can you eat all eggs? Like if you can eat penguin eggs. So for like 2 weeks, I learned that you could eat all but like 2 types of eggs. So like every egg, with the exception of 2, one of them is the platypus. Weird. Who saw that coming? You can eat their eggs. And they all taste different based on like what the animal eats and like even snake eggs. I was like, shut up. And like caviar, obviously, like I don't know, like I find these things like random facts and I'm like, oh, what else can we do with this? And so like I learned in Sprint and Stretch, I've been showing like animal documentaries and stuff. Like, did you know a rat can survive a 5-story fall? You can flush a rat down the toilet and it will survive. Like they're cockroaches. They're indestructible. And I'm like, shut up. Like what else can rats do? Like they turn into rat balls. Did you know that? Like their tails get tangled up and they actually turn into like one giant organism. And I'm like, am I in a sci-fi movie? Like the world is so weird. So like I find these little facts and it just like sticks with me.
So it's when rats form like Voltron, right?
They do though, and they like clog up sewer systems because their tails get stuck together and they're like a tumbleweed of rats. And I was like, oh my God, you're disgusting. So like that was my last thing that I learned that this week, and I'm still like finding out what rats can do. Disgustingly awesome.
Checking out rats and thinking about
but like for real documentaries, like I love them. Like explained on Netflix. Like I just sit there and soak that up. And I'm like, wait, what did you say? Like let's go to the internet. Like, is this a reliable source? Like I'm really good at checking my sources because like you gotta know if this rat ball thing is real. So
yeah, last thing you want is to tell someone about a rat ball and they're like, well, actually that was disproved.
well, and like my kids will tell me that too. They're like, I'm sorry, that's not true. And I'm like, what? And then I Google it and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. That was disproved. Like see, it's okay to be wrong.
Yeah, bring it all full circle. Very nice.
Yeah.
This has been awesome. I have no more questions for you, but I think we gave everyone more than enough to chew on, whether that's rats or eggs. So I just want to thank you again.
Hopefully it's pies. Pies are much friendlier for the moment.
Yeah, we talked about pies as well. You're right. I got to not be so negative. I just want to, again, thank you for taking some time to talk with us. I hope you enjoyed our conversation because I did. And just thanks again for all you do.
Thanks. Thank you. This was fun. This was better than I thought. I was so nervous.